Hey there. It's Sunday the 5th of October, Sunday evening. Perhaps you're watching us live as we lay down this Totally Football show, live streaming it on YouTube, or maybe you're catching up with our, polished end product on a Monday. Whatever, you're going to be enjoying Duncan Alexander.
Hello, James.
Hi, Duncan. Mark Carey.
Hello, James.
Welcome, Mark. Lovely to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
And also Daniel Storey, who's been on his travels as per. All right, Daniel.
Lovely to see you, James.
Lovely to see you too. Duncan, you had a hellish trip in. Hellish.
Right.
Yeah. What was your favourite bit of the weekend? Football-wise.
Football-wise. Yeah, let's stick to football. I think it was probably Semenyo's cameo. Well, not really a cameo, played the whole game, but, his performance for Bournemouth on Friday night. I mean, the most two-footed player in the Premier League, and he demonstrated that very well.
Indeed. Is he the best player in the Premier League, Mark? That's the question the Athletic's been asking.
Yeah, and Antoine asked that very question. Our colleague who is our data tactics writer, he was out there in the pouring rain. I haven't spoken to him yet, but I do wonder how he got on in that regard. But yeah, it was an assist as well as the two goals. And on form, I mean, put it this way, he's in my fantasy Premier League team.
But there you go.
Because if you don't have him, you're going to be falling behind. He's scoring points for fun.
In the real world, or what, we define the real world, but who can say? Who can say? Where would you classify him? I'll go to Daniel with this. Where would you classify him? Is he right now with involvements in 9 of the 11 goals that Bournemouth have scored so far this season? Is he the Premier League's most effective player?
Yeah, most effective is a really good way of saying it. I think best is really hard. I think he's definitely the most effective counter-attacking player. He's the one player at the moment where everybody knows what he's going to do, and yet doesn't seem to be able to find a way to stop it, which is, it's brilliant for Andoni Iraola. It's just the way he can go both ways. He can drive at you like really directly, or he can slow down the ball and let other people overlap and kind of create a counter that way. And he's brilliant to watch. I wish he was born in London. I wish he was available to England because he's a phenomenal player, and also has had a really impressive journey kind of through the EFL up to the Premier League. It's not been plain sailing. It's not been kind of elite academy and straight into a first team. He's had to work at it, so fair play.
Excellent. Well, lots to talk about today, including Bournemouth, but there's also drama for champions Liverpool. There's Crystal Palace's unbeaten run coming to an end. All sorts of stuff. The results anyway, busy Sunday afternoon, which saw Man City beating Brentford 1-0 at the G-Tech, beating the Bees with ease. Everton coming from a goal behind to beat Palace 2-1, ending their 19-game unbeaten run. Newcastle got past Forest 2-0 to keep Ange's winless streak going. Wolves held Brighton to a 1-1 draw at Molineux, and Villa saw off Burnley 2-1. That's their 4th straight victory. Unai Emery's side, crikey. Saturday, the big news was Arsenal going top of the Premier League table, thanks to their 2-0 victory over West Ham and Chelsea's 2-1 defeat of Liverpool, the champions' 3rd game lost in 8 days. 1 point behind Liverpool now. In 3rd and 4th are Spurs, who won 2-1 at Leeds, the first visiting side to win at Ellen Road in over a year, and Bournemouth, who indeed came from behind on Friday night to defeat Fulham 3-1 with a couple of absolutely belting goals, one of which was from Semenyo, and the other was from Justin Kluivert.
Correct, yeah.
Justin Kluivert. There you go. Also, Manchester United beat Sunderland 2-0. Duncan.
No 0-0 draws this weekend, but only Bournemouth scored more than 2 goals. It was a lot of 2-0s and 2-1s, and it was proper football, wasn't it? Like the goals per game rate this season's back to about 2.6.
Nice.
We're back to real football, I think.
Back to real football. So. Very nice. The game that we're going to... what game are we going to begin with, actually? We're going to start with Brentford Man City.
Yeah, maybe quickly.
Okay. Back to real football. Excellent. Well, Sunday's action is going to be first up for us today. Sunday's action is going to be first up for us today on the Totally Football Show. Assume you're not going with any commentary here, are you?
There is some Haaland, Peter Drury.
Oh, go on then. Let's have that then. Does he say anything silly?
He says, just one more, as in another goal.
All right. Just one more. Right. Erling Haaland there. That's now his 14th goal in his last 7 games for club and country. I'll leave it to the mathematicians to work out what that goal per game ratio is, but it's scary. I I can guess that much. And as was indeed the way that he took this goal, Daniel, rolling past poor Sepp van der Berg, giving him the definition of a torrid time, and then beating Nathan Collins as well.
Yeah, he's got that kind of beast mode back, hasn't he, where he looks offended if anyone tries to take the ball off him. He's scored in 10 of his 11 games this season, the home defeat to Spurs being the exception. But there's that sense, I think, especially with the early goals he scores, like the one against Arsenal, the one against Monaco midweek, this one, where it's almost like the first action of the game he does seems to be absolutely perfect. And Manchester City are back in that mode effectively where they start with a 1-0 head start because he's playing. And that's when they got to their relentless best, when they just got early leads and then ground things out. They don't actually win that many games 1-0 City, but this felt very 1-0 from 20 odd minutes onwards. And yeah, they obviously start the season slowly, but they are only, because of the weird vagaries of title challenging form this season, they're 5 points off the top and in a bit of a run.
3
points. 3 points
That's
off the
even
top.
less than 5. That's less than 5. So
yeah. So if the first 20 minutes it looked very 1-0, were the last 20 minutes looking quite 1-1-y, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was a physical battle. I think Pep Guardiola said as much. I think Haaland said as much after the game as well, that they knew that Brentford were going to be physical, lean on set pieces, lean on long throws, which has been a massive theme across the whole of the Premier League so far this season. And Coyote was the one, it didn't even have to reach the final third or the final, level with the penalty area. It just had to reach over the halfway line, and he was willing to throw it in because his launch was unbelievable. So I do think that the final 20 minutes, the second half was far improved from Brentford. So I think it was probably a lot to do with Brentford improving rather than necessarily Manchester City dropping off. Although, go on, there might be.
I was going to mention because Rodri went off.
Yeah. It was. I think Rodri coming off, I think was a factor, and we saw it against Arsenal for Manchester City as well, that they were willing to drop back and be a little bit more defensive. So, to Daniel's point as well, there's a little bit more of a robustness to Manchester City. They don't have to always do it in the aesthetically pleasing way that they've done of previous years, last season aside. But I thought the first half in particular, even aside from Rodri, Manchester City were playing really well against Brentford because Brentford was sitting in their 5-3-2 block. They were mid-blocking, making sure that everything was compact. And that's kind of how Manchester City like to typically break down teams who play zonally, keep a really compact structure. They can stay really high and start to get their positions positionally into place and try and break down a mid to low block. In the second half, they didn't have it quite their own way, and it was almost a blueprint from previous games this season where City have come unstuck, where teams have pressed really high, tried to put them under pressure, and they haven't been able to kind of break out in the same way for whatever reason. So I do think the fact that Brentford tweaked things a little bit in the second half, the fact that it didn't play into Manchester City's hands was why we saw a bit more of an even game in the second half.
Okay, and a huge chance for Igor Thiago as well to possibly equalise, although the oncoming Donnarumma possibly put him off his shot a little bit. Daniel?
Yeah, I was going to say, what Mark was saying there, completely agree. This felt like a weekend for me. If there was like a general theme, it was, I don't think this team would have won this game last season. And the City one is exactly one of those. They looked more frail last season in games like this. Spurs is another really good example. I think there's basically a 0% chance they win that game in those situations. I think there's basically a 0% chance to win that game in those circumstances last season. Chelsea kind of finding something late when they needed it. So yeah, City sort of closed the weekend exactly in the way that the whole theme of the weekend played out, I think.
Were there teams this weekend who wouldn't have lost that game last season? Liverpool, perhaps. We'll get onto that maybe in a bit. We're going to do the Sunday afternoon games. Duncan, was there something you wanted to add to our Man City Brentford chat?
Just, I guess, the assist from Guardiola was sort of just dinked over again, a sort of pass that City didn't really use before. And Gary Neville mentioned in commentary about the spine of that team now. If Haaland's in that sort of form, Donnarumma is just a bit of a game changer, a style changer as well, but also a game changer. And I guess we touched on it, but the impact of Rodri, not quite being able to get back to fitness, that's probably the key. That's probably the thing that is still the biggest kind of unknown about City this season, because they are, as we saw today, significantly more porous when he's not there.
Right. He has an international break to try and sort himself out. A hamstring issue it was that saw him leave field early on in that game. 3 points for City, who moved to within 3 points of the top. On to the 2 o'clock games then. 4 of them taking place simultaneously. Daniel, you were watching the Newcastle Forest affair. Duncan was covering Everton as they finally ended Palace's unbeaten streak. Mark, who didn't get first pick, I'm guessing, was across Wolves Brighton. And Villa Burnley, we've delegated that to Jacob Tanswell, who'll be popping up in a second or two. First of all, Duncan, what a moment around 4 o'clock when Jack Grealish kind of had the ball bounce off him into the net.
Yeah.
Will that come from behind win for Everton against Palace?
Yeah, that didn't look like that was going to happen for a long time. It was the most game of two halves game I've seen for a long time. I mean, Palace were brilliant the first half. Everton couldn't get near them. Tyler Dibbling started and didn't look that effective. But yeah, second half, Everton really changed it around. They've got this, where is it?
The comebacks.
Yeah. So there's an amazing stat. Everton have only won 3 of the last 31 home Premier League games where they've conceded the first goal.
Right. Have they all been against Crystal Palace?
They have all been against Crystal
Incredible.
Palace. So I think the Palace fans have had a lovely few months, but they probably, even when they took the lead in this game, and they had chances to go 2 up, Mateta missed a really good chance to kind of try to sort of dink. Pickford got it over him, but it was cleared off the line. And then, the winning goal from Grealish, he didn't know much about it. Ball was dinked in, and Beto had a header. To be fair, Beto gets criticism, but it was almost the perfect header, like powerful and down.
Right. It was a little bit too much at Henderson's feet, perhaps.
Perhaps, but as the ball bounced out and it was cleared, it was literally cleared onto Jack Grealish's leg, and it bounced off and in. So yeah,
there you go.
I just want to say how impressed I've been with Crystal Palace this whole season. Everyone sort of will agree with that. But again, thinking about the numbers, Crystal Palace have created the most big chances, up to defined big chances, which I think, Duncan, you'll correct me, is sort of an expected goals above 0.3, or is it something?
Well, it predates XG, so it was more, the original definition was a 50-50 chance, or a chance where the attackers reasonably expected to score. So.
Which still speaks to the point that not only are they creating chances, it's creating very, very clear-cut chances. A lot against Liverpool. They went on to win that despite conceding late, and obviously came back to win again and created a lot of big chances. I haven't exactly checked the numbers from this game specifically, but the Mateta goal being key to that the chance, I should say, being key to that they could have gone even further ahead, and obviously this time it's cost them.
There was a lot of people a lot of people have talked about David Moyes' changes as one of the reasons why Everton were able to be so much more dominant in this second half. To what extent is it the fact that this was only a couple of days after Palace played their first ever game in Europe, do you think, Daniel? Were their legs a bit empty?
I think last 30 minutes, that's definitely true. And I think David Moyes probably realised that. And Moyes has got this trick at the moment where whichever striker he starts is effectively a sort of sacrificial lamb, and it's only the one he brings off the bench that plays really well, because both Thierry Barry and Beto have already been hooked at half-time this season. At the Crystal Palace, the West Ham game on Monday, I was at, it was like really bad. It was really bad with the starting striker. You bring the guy off the bench and he then plays well, and they're sort of stuck in this cycle where someone comes off the bench, plays pretty well, then gets to start the next game, plays pretty badly. They bring on a striker who plays pretty well. He then starts the next game. So I don't quite know where that ends, but the game did completely change with Beto's introduction. And yet on Monday night, the massive complaint from Everton fans was like, why is Beto on the pitch? We want Thierry Barry on the pitch. And yeah, I don't quite know how they get to the bottom of that, other than giving a striker a runner of games. But yeah, I mean, Barry was really poor first half. Nothing was sticking to him. And then it's how Beto brings in those 3 behind the striker that changes the game.
Yeah, and we mentioned Dibbling, and Alcaraz came on in the second half, and he was transformative as well. So, I guess the plus side for Everton fans is that after a few seasons of them barely having 12 players to choose from, really, they've now got these options, and they can rotate, they can make changes mid-game, and we talked in the summer about clubs moving to new stadiums and how it takes time, and Everton are proving that a nonsense, really. I mean, they are making the Hill Dickinson, as we like to call it, into a fortress. And the Hilly D. And the noise at the end, when the Grealish goal went in, was authentic, let's put it that way.
First limbs, I think, at the Hilly D. So for Jack Grealish, scorer of the winner, picking out the man of the match, and a really touching moment afterwards when he was talking to Telly Football Show's Natalie Jedra, who moonlights for Sky Sport when she, and he spots, you may have seen this, he spots that the man of the match award is there. He says, I think that might be for me, but you should really be giving it to Crystal Palace's Adam Wharton, because he was amazing. I mean, those are my words, not his, but that was very much the message that Jack was sending out. It was a lovely touch to celebrate the opposition.
Neither of them.
And who deserve celebration, as you were doing there. This just, though, the game where it all came to an end. I mentioned them playing in Europe. They were 2-0 winners away against Dynamo Kiev, that game taking place in the east of Poland on Thursday night in the Europa Conference League. Was that a Daniel finger that was waving up on the big screen?
I was just going to say that Wharton and Grealish, kind of coincidentally, were the two probably most surprising omissions from the England squad named in midweek as well. So I wonder if that was kind of partly to do with that, maybe, because the fact that Wharton wasn't in was really, really surprising. He's been brilliant this season. And Grealish, I think, probably thought he'd done enough with the creativity to get back in. So, yeah, kind of shared initiative for them both to push in for the next one.
England taking on Wales in a friendly on Thursday night, is that right?
Thursday night, I will be there.
Are you going to go along, Mark?
Yeah, I'm really excited. It'll be the first England game that I've reported on, so I'm very excited.
Excellent. Now, Daniel, you were watching Newcastle's 2-0 win over Nottingham Forest with silly old Big Nick Valdemar again on the score sheet. Bruno Guimaraes breaking the deadlock in this game. What can you tell us?
So Ange Postecoglou, I think rightly chose to go significantly more defensive, and it was an effective game plan until it wasn't. Bruno Guimaraes' goal was really, really good, excellent finish, and that opened up the game. And from that point, it was completely one-way traffic because Forest made changes to try and get into it, tried to completely switch the game, were not able to do that. And Newcastle, they certainly deserved the 2-0 win, could easily have been more. Forest only created 0.3 XG in the whole game, which I know that's partly about game state because they were deliberately defensive for the first hour, but it's kind of mad to me that, they've appointed Postecoglou because they want to completely change the style, and within 6 or 7 games, he's having to kind of fight crisis by going defensive and seeing if that will work. It hasn't really worked. Goodness only knows what happens over the next 2 weeks because, there's sorry, go on.
No, you said last week that you felt there was every chance that Forest would be on another manager come Christmas. This Thursday, while Palace were off winning in Poland against Dynamo Kiev, Forest, bless, were managing to lose at home to Midtjylland 3-2, a game which saw chants from the home fans of sacked in the morning at their own manager, which is pretty remarkable after then 6 games in charge.
He's had a good
now
crack of the whip.
Yeah, I mean, I was there, and it was toxic. I think, yes, that sounds very hasty, but I think rather than towards Ange, this was kind of towards this bizarre situation where, Nuno, for whatever reason, has been made to feel like he's not in a position he thinks is ideal over the summer, and then publicly talks about it, and then is sacked, and then they go and get Postecoglou, who is, I know that Nuno was trying to shift the style, but it's a complete shift in mid-season. We've talked about all this for the last couple of weeks, I know. So I think it was more a kind of declaration of like what's going on. It's interesting where Marinakis sits in the main stand. He sits in front of this massive TV watching the screen. And in front of him are some season ticket holders, or certainly some match ticket holders on Thursday night. And they were turning around when Midtjylland scored the 3rd goal as if to say, like, what's going on? Like, if nothing else, Forest were in control of everything last season or felt in control of everything. And now, like, what's happening? This is not what we signed up for or thought we were signing up for. And that sounds really entitled, but Marinakis' whole shtick, his whole ethos is, we want more, we want more, we want more. And if you tell supporters constantly, we want more, we're going to spend more, we're going to do better, we're going to, finishing 7th just means we finish higher than 7th next year. It's very difficult to then be like, whoa, you need to be patient when the manager draws 2 and loses 5 of his first 7 games after being appointed. So it's quite a hard thing to to tell supporters when you've told them to demand more.
But there's no question that of a change happening over the international break, surely, for Forest.
Oh, there is. I don't know where the percentages lie, so I'd be guessing if I said there would, but there is a significant chance that he is not there at the end of the international break, I suspect.
Wow.
Partly that will come down to who the heck Forest appoint next, because it's only, as we've just said, it's only 5 or 6 weeks until they were looking for this guy. So I don't know how easy that is to do. There is an argument, I think, definitely, even if you're Marinakis, to saying, let's give it 3 or 4 more games, let's give him the international break to see how 2 weeks in training does, although quite a lot of the squad are off with England, particularly the midfielders. But yeah, there's definitely a non-zero chance that he's not there for Forest's next game.
Wow. As for Newcastle, who actually won this game 2-0, mentioned Waldemade scoring. That was a penalty, which you particularly admired his style on, Mark.
Yeah, I just thought it was a little bit odd. I mean, he put it right in the top corner, in the top left corner. It just felt like, we've all watched so many penalties, yet still that one seemed unconventional aesthetically. And you look at a replay and he doesn't kind of, his leg, I'm trying to sort of explain it audibly. The trajectory of his leg doesn't look as though he's kicked a ball very hard. He almost ends with his right foot that he kicked with crossed over his left foot. And I think you mentioned it before, James. It almost seems like a Rabona shot, except it was a conventional shot because it was almost from a standing start. It just seemed a little bit odd, but it clearly worked because it went to the top left-hand corner.
Bamboozled Matt Sells, who probably couldn't have got to it, even if he'd known what Big Nick was doing. Only 3 players have ever scored in their first 3 Premier League appearances at St James's Park. Nick Waldemade is one. The other 2 are kind of footnotes in the kind of Newcastle football history by the name of Ferdinand L and Shearer A. Crikey. What's going to be like? Is Visser going to be back after the international break? Are the Toon fans going to see the Visser-Waldemade combination up front? What's that going to be like? 'Cause it sounds good.
It's who would come out of the side if they did sort of double up. It's not quite the same as
You've got Elanga at the moment and Lady Di.
Gordon on the left.
Sorry, Alexander Gordon. Yeah.
Yes, that's a good
Anthony Gordon. Right?
Anthony Gordon. That is a very good comparison. Of,
No, not mine.
I've seen that online. No, I know what you're referring to. It's very good. But even in the midfield, who would come out of the midfield if it were to be that? Because you need your width on either side. Fullbacks, of course, they would stay where they are. I mean, I can't think between Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes and Joe Linton, they are so crucial to the way that Newcastle play, the energy that they play with, the way that the tenacity that they play with. It was because of the tenacity that Bruno Guimaraes showed that led to the first goal as well. So I can't see who would come out. And as I say, I think it's a bit akin to the Ekitike, Alexander Isak comparison with Liverpool. Do you play them together or do you just have them as rotational options? I'd probably say the latter.
Both. I mean, to Daniel's point about Everton strikers, I think, football managers these days love to use the word finishers rather than substitutes, don't they? Yeah. And it's a good position for these clubs to be in, to have those options when they're available.
Good problems to have. Speaking of problems, Wolverhampton Wanderers, still bottom of the table, but they got another point today. For the second week in a row, they thought they were about to get all 3. Mark, this time it was up against Brighton. What happened?
The best way I can explain it is a game happened. There wasn't a great deal of action. Probably would be last on Match of the Day, but I don't want to be too disparaging about the game. I think a draw was probably about right. I think that the point that you make about Wolves having a lead, which they haven't had too often this season, and then sort of giving it up, was unfortunate. But I do think they attracted Brighton onto them a little bit. I think they were sitting deeper, probably after about 55 to 60 minutes, and you think you can't do this for that long. And it was I think it was 86 minutes that Jan-Paul van Hecke scored it was a corner that was played short and eventually crossed in. It was an excellent header as well. But Wolves looked quite dangerous on the counter-attack, if nothing else. But in possession, it felt a little bit, I think it was said in commentary as well, that there was a kind of a tension for a team that is sitting at the bottom of the league, to think, as long as we don't make a mistake here, it's very risk averse. If I can just play it backwards to a teammate, then it's not my problem. I've not been the one to give up possession. And if you do that across enough sequences, it ends up going back to the goalkeeper and can't go further back. It just felt a little bit negative at times, but they did look pretty dangerous on the counter-attack. But credit to Brighton, they came back into the game and did really well. It's interesting that both of the goals, albeit not from first contact, but both of the goals came from set pieces. And it's been widely spoken about, I know, but this season in the Premier League, it's been a season so far of set pieces. And of course, I looked into the numbers on this, including penalties, so all dead ball situations. 35% of the total goals scored in the Premier League this season have been via set pieces. And that's the highest in the data set that I at least have, going back to 2018-19.
Does that include throw-ins, he said stupidly?
No, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's when you can get a dead ball situation, get your choreographed routines out and get it into the mixer, because it's clearly effective.
Anyone who's a fan of anguished fans on TV should watch the behind the goal as that Brighton equaliser goes in, because it wasn't completely full, the Wolves' end, so you can actually make out people a bit more clearly. And there was so many sort of just that moment of understanding that the 2 points have just disappeared up the road. And but there's still
was Vitor Pereira sat there because he got sent off early on in this.
Yeah, he protested. Was it Baleba that got booked for a foul on the touchline?
Yeah, it didn't need to be protested that much, I thought.
So he kicked the ball towards the fourth official, is that right?
Towards the match official, yeah. It didn't require that much anger, I don't think. He was just frustrated by it. This was in the first half as well, and so it wasn't like they'd just thrown away the lead and was duly sent off, and then within about 90 seconds, Wolves go on and score. So maybe it was a good luck charm, I don't know.
There you go. Excellent. Daniel, if you've nothing else to add on that, next up we can hear about Aston Villa clocking their fourth consecutive victory, or I'll say that again, fourth consecutive victory. This one coming against Burnley. Watching at Villa Park was Jacob Tanswell, who joins us now or a short time ago? What do you think? Now? Who joins us now? Jacob, you're live from erstwhile crisis club Aston Villa following the 2-1 victory over Burnley. What's going on there? 4 straight wins.
Yeah, the garden seems a little bit rosy now, doesn't it? I think that was always going to be the case, really. You saw these 4 games and you thought this was a really good chance for Villa to turn it around. 2 pretty favourable home games on paper in the league. Then you have Europa League, which always tends to be a bit of a salvation for struggling teams. Saw that with Tottenham last year. And in fairness, Villa's players are looking more confident because they're scoring, because they're winning games. You saw it, the fact that Villa didn't score a goal, and the first team in the top 7 divisions yet to score a goal. So that obviously weighed on them. But now they look a little bit more free going forward. Of course, there are still vulnerabilities. You saw that in the final 15 minutes against Burnley when they pulled a goal back. But it just feels like Villa are starting to get into their mojo. Not quite there yet, but the signs are promising.
They do go a little bit under the radar, Villa. Daniel Marlon with the brace in this game. But who would be the most kind of under the radar-esque player at the moment for Villa?
You always have to say Lamar Bogard, really. A young player. He's a player that Emery hasn't quite developed young players since he's come to the club. And that's something that he wants to develop and he wants to do in the next couple of years. With Bogard, he's a player that's very versatile, a right back, a right side, a centre back, a centre midfielder. He's not been seen as one of these players that will go on to these heights. But he started today. He's been fantastic in recent games. He's very intelligent. He's only 21, 22, but he can play multiple positions. He's got a very good game awareness. And now, as Emery always likes to say, he's got this real structure and he understands the structure of Emery's team. So Bogard is a young Dutch international, very good, very composed. And I think he's probably been a shining light in the last few weeks.
And a word for Morgan Rogers, who continued his excellent series of assists.
Yes. What is it now? He's had 8 assists since April. In fairness to Rogers, he's had a really tricky time, really. You saw he got cheered when he made a pass against Bologna. He got cheered when he came off against Sunderland. He's been maybe Villa's worst player this season. He's really struggled. But today and against Feyenoord on Thursday, of course, he's not been polished and he's still been quite loose in his passing. But he keeps getting the ball. He keeps getting into these great positions. And if you get enough chances and you get enough opportunities in that number 10 position, driving at the back line, you're going to create and obviously record assists. So it's very good for him. He just needs now to go up to the levels that we saw last season.
Villa, when they come back from the international break, will be away at Spurs. What do you think? What do you think Emery will be most focused on over the next 10, 12 days?
I think rest. I think more or less is the case with him, really, because he's such an obsessive. His players are tactically demanding and they sit in long analysis sessions. They had 4 before the game today. So I think the players will be burnt out. I think it's a good time for them to go on to the international break. It's a good time for them to go back to home if they're not away with their countries. But with Emery, you always know that he'll be planning. And this is why this period before the international break was so key to win these games because they've got Tottenham, they've got Liverpool coming up, they've got these big, tough games that they might not win, but they've now got points on the board and they've got a bit of momentum. So that's the most important thing headed into this international break.
Yeah, Spurs, Man City, and then Liverpool, the first three back after the international break. Jacob, I hope you have a lovely spell off as well. And thank you so much for that.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Cheery stuff from Jacob Tanswell. Aston Villa on the march up the Premier League table, at the top of which there was a change this weekend. We'll get onto that after this. Splendid. And then we're just straight back in, literally, boom. We've done all of that. Yada, yada, yada. Bum, 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 bum. Oh, dear. I mean, that's happened. Top two in the Premier League. Arsenal and Liverpool swap places on Saturday. The Gunners moving a point clear of the champions after their win over West Ham and Liverpool's defeat away to Chelsea. In front of the watching Madonna, who of course penned True Blue in celebration of her deep affiliation with the Stamford Bridge side. Wild scenes at the end for Chelsea with Enzo Maresca doing a Jose down the touchline, kind of. Picking up a yellow card, getting sent off. Biggest win for Chelsea since New Jersey, Daniel?
Oh, yeah, definitely since New Jersey. Just the kind of resilience, for one. The fact that they had to do things in game which felt a bit uncomfortable. So I thought Reece James he wasn't the best player on the pitch, but his ability to play in multiple positions, I thought kind of ironic that him and Trent are the sort of two England right backs, and Liverpool really look like they've got a problem at right back that they're really struggling to solve. And Chelsea, for as long as Reece James stays fit, and will always provide a consistency. He can play central midfield, he can play right back, he can play right wing back, he can play central defence for a bit here. So I thought the way they managed that was really effective. And Esteval getting the goal at the end, because Chelsea have an awful lot of wide attacking players, and what they need is someone to go on a run and deliver, or at least support João Pedro. And so Esteval scoring is massive as well. At no point, as soon as Liverpool equalised, I thought, last season memory kicked in, and I kind of thought that Liverpool would go on and win the game. They'd be the one that pushed, but it was Chelsea doing that. So that feels like a change as well. I still got no idea about Chelsea, by the way. I still think they could finish fifth or they could finish second. I've got no idea, but that makes the moments that they produce all the more important. And this was a huge one.
So a win achieved without Cole Palmer. So many other players absent as well for Enzo Maresca's side. So a really, really impressive performance. Liverpool, meanwhile, first time that Arne Slot's lost 3 games in a row in his managerial career. What's up with Liverpool? You mentioned Trent. This is kind of the weekend when everyone's bringing up Trent. Mo Salah, maybe his form bears some factoring into this whole conundrum. Are they the kind of issues that can be fixed over an international break, do we think, for Arne Slot?
Good question. I think naturally when you have that much turnover in the squad, of course they had such an unbelievably terrible summer themselves as humans, never mind sort of on-pitch stuff. I think the amount of bodies that they got through the door in terms of turnover means that they do need to take some time to get used to how each other plays. The runs and that will all come. I know that's been spoken about quite widely, but when you're a team the size of Liverpool, you need that to click quite quickly. But then yesterday, Slot did refer back to, or go back to Szoboszlai, McAllister and Gravenberch in the middle to try and just get a bit more familiarity again. And it still didn't quite work. I think the credit does have to go to Chelsea. The way that they were really, really aggressive and stopped Liverpool kind of building through the thirds was impressive. But I don't think there's anything you can really put your finger on specifically. It's not just right back. It's not just left back. It's not the fact that the attack isn't quite clicking. It's not just Salah. It's kind of all of the above. I think specifically yesterday, it was a little bit the case that Liverpool kind of struggled building through the thirds because of Mamardashvili. The fact that he's left-footed, I thought, was quite crucial because they were playing passes to him. Right. I think almost thinking it was Alisson, and he was having to just shuffle it back onto his left foot or play it with his weaker right foot. And he was kind of fine with it. And there wasn't an error per se, but it meant that each then subsequent pass was laboured, and by which point Chelsea were just able to be in position and basically intercept the Liverpool attack. So it was very stilted, very uncomfortable to watch, very laboured in the way that Liverpool were trying to build through the thirds. There were a lot of misplaced passes, all things which were just so unlike Liverpool last season, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think something that's gone a little bit under the radar is Alexis McAllister's form as well. He was so crucial, particularly in the second half of last season, and he just looks. I mean, I know he's had quite a lot of injury problems, but he really looks off it. And as Mark says, where do you want to start? The attack's not clicking. Kirkes is. I mean,
they need to improve on crosses.
Defending. Yeah. I mean, Arne Slot needs to dig out that Moyes tweet and do his own version, but. But then again, on the flip side, some of the reaction has been insane.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, like people sort of, I mean, obviously, a club like Liverpool will have a larger online fan base than others, but so the sort of anti-Slot.
Have people been doing face swaps on him?
No, he hasn't quite got to face swap. Although quite an easy person to face swap, I imagine. But he hasn't got to that stage yet. But yeah, like people already talking about who Liverpool's next manager should be. I mean, come on, it's he's one of only 2 managers to win in the league in the last 30 odd years. So there is a lot to work out. But this is why Mark and I will bang the sample size drum in August and September, because yes, Liverpool won their first 5 league games, but a lot of those were quite fortunate. They're better than they've shown this week, but they're probably not as good as they looked maybe in the late summer.
The truth lies somewhere in between. Trent, as I mentioned, getting a lot of references, conspicuous by his absence in this season's Liverpool. Mike says was TAA actually incredibly underrated. Liverpool having huge problems now at fullback, finding it so hard to progress the ball. I had to laugh, says Mike, at Match the Day, analysing Salah not helping Bradley, as if that ever happened with Trent, who was just mocked for being a poor defender.
Well, Cucurella pointed out post-game that Chelsea had worked on attacking Liverpool's right-hand side because they know that Salah doesn't really track back. So, yeah, I think there was some harsh criticism of Alexander-Arnold for his defending when he actually, not only did he do that reasonably well, but his ability to step in midfield and play the passes that maybe McAllister and Gravenberch can't do is also being missed.
Sorely missed.
I wrote that piece, as Duncan will know, about Liverpool changing their out-of-possession approach. I won't labour on it too long, but the idea basically being that Gakpo is now starting a little bit deeper out of possession, which allows McAllister to shuffle along, which allows Gravenberch to shuffle along as well, to try and support whoever the right-back is, and there have been many so far this season, to try and mitigate the fact that Salah doesn't tend to track back very much. That didn't happen quite as much yesterday, which is why I think Conor Bradley, especially in the first half, well, it was only him in the first half, and he obviously got hooked at half-time, was quite exposed, which I think was quite telling that they were targeting it. On the point of Trent Alexander-Arnold in possession, one thing that he did, we know about his passing range in general, but often when the opposition was coming onto him, onto Liverpool specifically, he was able to play that ball, often a diagonal or sort of up the line to Salah. And as much as anything, yes, it was a searching pass, but it was also a bit of a release valve for the pressure. And they don't quite have that at the moment as well.
And the other player who no one seems to mention at all, but who left, is Luis Diaz. And he was often the recipient of those balls and was able to sort of, hold the ball up and that's another big loss. And it is hard to change a team so significantly. On
the subject of Mo Salah, if he doesn't track back and he also doesn't score goals, he's got what? Let's check this out. He's got 4 goals in the last 16 Premier League matches. Is it heresy to suggest that maybe he could do with a spell out? Or again, is that too small a sample size?
Personally, I would say it's not even small sample size. I just feel like he's judged by his own standards, of course. I think that for the goal that Liverpool scored, it came from the fact that Dominic Szoboszlai, when he moved to right back, was overlapping and having bodies and supporting Salah. There was a lot of occasions throughout the whole game where he was isolated. And sometimes he likes that because it means that you can face up the opposition fullback 1v1 and have a bit of space to run into, and then you need runners ahead of him. There was a lot of times where, I think it was actually when Florian Wirtz came on, there's a very specific example where he gave the ball to Salah.
With that magnificent spin?
No, that was a fantastic, what could have been an assist, chance created, which was really good. And that's the sort of positions you want to get Salah in. But it was some later in the second half where He gave it to Salah thinking, okay, well, you're the guy I should be giving it to. And then I think turned his back to the ball and just sort of ran away. And then it was Salah against 2 to 3 Chelsea players. And it was like, he needs runners ahead of him. He needs bodies ahead of him. And that's when he can either cut inside and play those back post crosses that he did so well last season, or maybe cut inside and score, or shoot, whatever it may be. When he's so isolated, he can't really do any of those quite as well. So I think it was telling that when Szoboszlai overlapped him, he had a pass to make for then the subsequent cross to be made and then the subsequent goal to be scored.
They've got Man United coming up at Anfield straight after the international break. We've caused some problems in the past, Daniel, and also not. Daniel, what's your take on how much Slot is going to be able to sort out over the next 10 to 12 days?
I mean, it's really difficult. The Salah question is a really interesting and instructive one, I think, because if you've got 5 problems to solve, Arne Slot is effectively left with 2 options, right? He tries to solve all of them at once. So he tries to get the perfect team together and hopes that when it clicks, Liverpool, everybody knows, right, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is how we're supposed to operate. We're now all good again. If you try and do that compartmentalized, you say, let's take out Salah, and then you think, right, we solved the other problems. Well, there's a chance that when you bring Salah in, everybody has to learn how to do that again. And if you're in a title race, or you're expected to be in a title race, that's really hard to do, because that can take like 2 or 3 months, and you might not have 2 or 3 months. So I suspect he's going to have to try and solve them all at once. I think that the Trent thing is interesting, because the question is whether they're sort of missing players and what they did, or they just have, there's so much change that different players are operating in a different way. So I think Dominic Szoboszlai could be a really good right back, but he's a very different one to Trent. I think Frimpong could be a good right back, but he's a very different one to Trent. I think Conor Bradley maybe could be a fill-in, but he's a different one to Trent. So all the options they have are not just different to Alexander-Arnold, they're also different to each other. So it's almost like every team he picks feels like the first day of the season at the moment, and we're not quite sure how they'll play. And that's, the international break is massive for that, because 2 weeks on the training ground is something that managers of elite clubs, Champions League clubs, don't get very often.
Although he won't have too many of his squad there with him, because they'll be off on international break. Arsenal now 1 point ahead of Liverpool at the top of the table. They beat West Ham 2-0, goals from former West Ham boy Declan Rice, and then Bukayo Saka with the penalty. So 21 shots and 47 touches in the opposition box for Arsenal, which are their best numbers in a game this season. That was the good news. The bad news is that, once again, Martin Odegaard has gone off. Indeed, he's left before half-time in each of his last 3 Premier League starts. This time it's a...
First time that's ever happened in the Premier League.
Third time?
First time.
Oh, first time.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous, really, because he came off injured in midweek in the Champions League as well, and it's almost like, give him a rest, Mikel. But then the flip side argument to that would be that he has been back to his best at times this season, so I can see why he was risked.
Indeed, a medial collateral ligament, an MCL. Is that, who wants to venture a medical opinion on the likely duration of that?
I really wouldn't know, but it doesn't sound good. I don't know if you know, Daniel, but unless I Google it.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad?
It's about 3 to 4 weeks.
ACL's
weeks, the
MCL, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the hipster ligament.
Yeah. It's an ACL light, let's put it that way. West Ham, who are now managed, of course, by Nuno Espirito Santo, have picked up 4 points from their first 7 games, which is their joint worst start ever in the Premier League.
Just on Arsenal's defence, which is imperious, and I know Daniel loves this sort of chat. They've conceded 3 so far. Now, I think, is Chelsea's 15 under threat? We had this chat with Burnley, didn't we, last season? But that wouldn't have counted because it was in the Championship. So, but yeah, I mean, do you know the last team to score more than twice against Arsenal in the Premier League was Luton Town 2 seasons ago? Wow. Which is mad.
That is mad. So they've conceded 3 and 7. 7 is about, 20% of the season. So 5 times 3 is 15. So you're pretty much on track to match Mourinho-era Chelsea. That's remarkable.
Yeah, they're on about 16 at the moment, so they need to tighten up a bit. But they, they got a chance.
All right. Well, best wishes to Martin Odegaard. A lot of positivity, though, regarding how Arsenal performed without him once he did go off, thanks to the arrival of Zubimendi, of course. Anything else you want to add on this, or should we get on to the likes of Spurs and Manchester United and yes, Bournemouth? We'll do that then next. Wait for the Premier League. All sorts of things have been happening. For example, Barcelona getting absolutely, not sure what word you use, spanked, I hope, really. Spanked by Sevilla. This weekend, 4-1. Also around Europe, Juventus and Milan going at it on Sunday night. Don't know what's happened in that because that hasn't actually kicked off yet. But I'm warming up to say that all these stories and their outcomes will be featured in the Totally Football Show European edition, which will be out with you first thing Tuesday morning. It'll also feature another record for Harry Kane, who's now set a record for the number of consecutive games that he set a record in, I think. Also, word on the future of San Siro, Giuseppe Meazza, and loads of other stuff in the Totally Football Show European edition with myself, James Horncastle, Julian Laurence, Paul Balouz, and Seb Stafford-Bloor. Speaking of away from the Premier League, Daniel, you went to see the best team in Scotland on Saturday, and they don't play in Glasgow.
They do not play in Glasgow. They play in Edinburgh, and they are the fabulous Gorgie boys, the Hearts. I went to my first ever Edinburgh derby. It was kind of everything I wanted to be, like really nasty before the game, really blood and thunder, and I mean a nonsense wind as well for the game. And then Hearts scored with pretty much the last kick to win the derby. And I went up for this on the road series because not just because of Hearts, but because I think the story for, or kind of the narrative or the core celeb for like 20, 25, maybe even longer years was that will the old firm come down and play in England? And actually, it now seems that the alternative, the flip side of that, might be the far more relevant question, because Hearts have, well, they're minority. They've been invested in by Tony Bloom at Brighton, and Bournemouth owners have a minority stake in Hibs. So it was a kind of the first Edinburgh derby with Premier League investment. And I genuinely think, I'm not just saying this because I went, but I genuinely think it could be a game changer for Scottish football, because I don't think it will take a huge amount of investment with the state that Celtic and Rangers are in at the moment now to create a title challenge. I didn't see Hearts being top of the league at this point, and they are deservedly so. But the recruitment this summer, their best player at the weekend was a guy they signed from a Slovakian top-tier club. They signed players from Germany and Portugal, and they've got this Kazakhstani guy joining in January who's everyone's very excited about. So they are kind of in with the Tony Bloom data model anyway. And yeah, it's really interesting. It can bring competition to Scotland. It can improve the league. The question I have for supporters is whether there's any degree of that subservience to a Premier League club sits awkwardly in any way. But I don't think they have a choice, because the finances of Scottish football are so weighted against everybody but Celtic and Rangers that you take your chance when you can. So yeah, the piece will be out, I think, this Thursday. So I'm really looking forward to writing it.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to reading that in the eye. Duncan?
Yeah, I mean, to back up Daniel's point, I think the Scottish League was quite slow in adopting data and things like that in their recruitment. And I think that's where they really fell behind some of the sort of equivalent European leagues in size and stature. And I think it's pretty exciting. I mean, having a team other than Rangers or Celtic win the Scottish title would be good. I mean, obviously, Bournemouth and Brighton, as Daniel mentioned, there's a bit of other South Coast influence as well, with Russell Martin going to from Southampton to
he's doing
to Rangers.
his bit for the
Yeah, well, he's helping as well. So they got a plucky point at Falkirk. So yeah,
excellent. Also, should mention that the Old Farm derby took place this weekend, and for the first time in 6,013 days, it saw Ipswich Town beating Norwich City in that celebrated fixture. 3-1.
Yeah, the Athletics' Michael Bailey, I spoke to yesterday, was very concerned, he's a Norwich fan, that they would lose for the first time to Ipswich since the iPad had been invented. And lo and behold, maybe they'll start selling it in East Anglia.
16 years, 14 matches in that time. Sorry, Daniel.
Some incredible S-housery at that game as well. So for people that don't know, Marcelino Nunes became the first player for a long time to go between the clubs this season when signing from Norwich for Ipswich. And some Ipswich Town supporters had brought a banner which was effectively a screenshot of a Norwich fan's tweet that said, "Build Nunes a statue already," from when he was a Norwich player. And they had this massive banner in the home end. It was pretty fruity at full time. Ipswich were by miles the better team. They've kind of flat to deceive this season, but if they keep playing like that, they will go up. And some of Norwich's defending was not safe for work, quite literally.
Crikey. Excellent. There you go. That was Ipswich 3, Norwich 1, which is the exact same scoreline, actually. I noticed that our next game that we're going to talk about featured, that's Bournemouth 3-1 Fulham from Friday. I asked the question, which I read in The Athletic, is Antoine Semenyo the best player in the Premier League right now? Effective, says Daniel. Duncan, you're going to say yes, aren't you? You love him.
Well, I wrote that headline, so I'm going to back up. Yeah. But I think, as we talked about earlier, he is just, I just love how two-footed he is. Like, he's not just a player that can use his weaker foot. It's like he genuinely is equally talented with both feet, and that is a good thing.
Did you know that, because I saw this, I think, on the TV yesterday, and I had to check it in the numbers, he has taken the most non-penalty shots of any player since the start of last season in the Premier League, more than Erling Haaland. And it's just jarring. You just think that it's always central strikers who are going to be at the top of that list. And Semenyo is on 141 non-penalty shots, and ahead of Haaland, Salah, Cole Palmer, all the big names. And he himself, of course, now is a big name, fantastic player. And maybe it's because he's able to shoot off both feet that there's no angle too tight that he can't still get a shot away.
Speaking of tight angles, how about that opening goal in this game? Wow.
Yeah. The way that there was two players doubling up on him, and you thought, okay, well, he's kind of going to a bit of a cul-de-sac. He might need to turn out and pass it, maybe make a run as a consequence. But he thought, no, I'm going to just drive to the byline, just keep the ball in. And then I think he said in his post-match interview, he said he looked up and there was no one there. So may as well go for it.
But he managed to.
Exactly. And it wasn't even. I think sometimes it's so much more satisfying if it's just cleanly through, rather than just like off the goalkeeper's back leg and then in whatever it is.
I was watching that game with some people, and I think at least two of them involuntarily went, "Whoa!" Because like just seeing the net bulge from that position, it defied logic for a few seconds.
Justin Kluivert's goal, a moment for a lot of his teammates as well. You are predicting the Cherries to finish in the top 6 this season, Daniel.
Yeah, I think I said that a few weeks ago, so it would be remiss of you not to bring it up when they win. So thank you. I just think the amount of teams in Europe this season was always going to create an advantage for someone else. I kind of wondered whether it would be Manchester United, but maybe not. But Bournemouth are very, very good at lots and lots of things. There's no obvious weakness in the team. They have rebuilt the defence, and I always think the sign of a brilliantly run football club or elite football club is when players leave and their replacements look better than the players who left for more money. And I can't think of a better example this season so far than Kirk-Truffert, because he just looks made for Bournemouth. And it's this ability to have these plug-in and play signings that always look like they've already been at the club 6 months before you see them play. And that's a huge compliment to the environment of the club, and it's a huge compliment to Andoni Iraola and his role in that, because they are really, really, really hard to play against. And they also, they are punching above their weight by such a distance. If you go to that ground, it is small. It isn't a football heartland necessarily, but they're just really, really sensible and clever and smart and do things right and squeeze things out of players who you don't expect. So, Lewis Cook and Adam Smith and the kind of unheralded players, the glue that makes everything stick together, they're really, really good at it. So eventually what happens in this is that a club has that rise, and then the bigger clubs switch on and think we need to shut this down, either by signing their players, which people have tried with Bournemouth, or by shutting down the style. So that's the kind of next era of Bournemouth. But I don't see any reason they can't finish in the top 6.
Currently lying 4th, 2 points off the top. They will struggle to repeat that trick of selling somebody and having a better player coming in the case of Antoine Semenyo, as and when he does move, which is likely to be, I guess, a big story maybe next summer. But sorry, Duncan.
I mean, the other fear, I guess, for Bournemouth fans would be that Ireola is targeted and picked up by someone else. But I think he's really enjoying the freedom and the space he has to instill his principles at Bournemouth. I think for someone like him going to a bigger club and doing that, we've seen many times, it's not as easy to walk into a hyper club and make that much difference. But he was out running the line in an under 8s girls game this morning.
Was he?
Yeah, so it's good to see it.
Excellent. There you go. They're lying 4th. Manchester United, who Daniel mentioned as potential beneficiaries of a nice, gentle midweek calendar by and large, did indeed this week get a victory. They beat Sunderland. What's that stat about? Is it 50% of all Ruben Amorim's wins in the Premier League have been against promoted sides?
Yeah.
There you go. So 2-0 against Sunderland. But was there a bit of flexibility here? A lot of people accusing him of being too wedded to his 3-5-2. But was there a different approach from Man United here, Mark?
I'm not too sure. I think as much as anything, the fact that he was playing the players that he was, including Mason Mount. I know that Mason Mount scored the goal. I always feel like Manchester United just look better in and out of possession. It's widely spoken about, but I do think that's the case when Mason Mount is in the team.
Right.
I think so. I think that the widely spoken about thing is that they look so porous in midfield when there's just a midfield two. Mount can play a little bit further forward, but when Manchester United are out of possession, he can start to plug a few gaps and block a few passing lanes, etc. I do think
Should I be getting ready for the Mason Mount kind of redemption bandwagon?
If he can stay fit, I think that's the thing. And it's one of those as well with the firepower that Manchester United have added this summer. I always like to say it's your best 11 or your 11 best. And if it's your 11 best, you'd maybe include Sesko, Brian Mbeumo and Mateus Cunha. But I think that your best 11 probably includes Mason Mount for the reasons I described. So I think with Sesko in the team as well, it seemed like they were doing it more of playing directly. Sometimes they do just circulate it around the back and it's for passing sake. But then when they do go direct to Sesko, he can then get a flick on. And when I basically think United look most dangerous when they go a little bit more direct. And now they've got someone who can make it stick or flick it on better than Rasmus Højlund, basically.
Daniel.
Mount's one of those players that his career is absolutely bizarre, really. I was looking at this the other day for something else about England, and Mount was the player fouled for Harry Kane to get the penalty that England missed in the last World Cup against France. So he was key, he was central to that massive moment of England's last World Cup, and it's pretty much his last cap. I think it might even have been his last cap, 2022. He's got like 36 England caps. He's only 26, and he hasn't played for England for 3.5 years now. Or 3 years now, because it was a Winter World Cup. It's just a very strange player. Obviously, Manchester United has been really bad for him. But I agree with Mark. Like he makes a difference to teams. There's a reason why managers really like him. I honestly think there was a really interesting sliding doors moment when Manchester City signed him. Both he and Jack Grealish were both available at roughly the same time, and City went for Grealish rather than Mount. And I think they were looking at Mount at the time, and Guardiola liked him. It's been really interesting to see how those two careers could have gone differently over the last 3 or so years since, because I think it's fair to say that they both kind of all made the wrong choice.
Wow, Grealish at United and City with Mason Mount.
A better world is possible. And Mount's finish in this game was excellent.
Yes.
I think the other thing we should mention is that, and Manchester United fans were singing about Peter Schmeichel on Saturday, was the Senna Laman's debut in goal, and was good at catching and saving and kicking, and I think that made quite a big difference. So United, that's 3 home wins in a row they've got now. They're only 5 points off the top now. They're not going to challenge for the title, I suspect.
6 points. 6 points off the top.
6 points, yeah. But it's a very condensed Premier League. And to Daniel's point, you do think that, Bournemouth, Man United, maybe Sunderland, Everton, with fewer commitments, they could have. It's a really good chance for them to get a top 5 finish, which should be Champions League football.
Manchester United in the Champions League, it could happen, says the Athletics' Duncan Alexander. Nice to have some good news to report about Man United for once.
And also, the other thing is, we know there's a lot of Ruben Amorim stats that people know, but one of the classics is that he hasn't won back-to-back games since being there.
Right.
That, as we mentioned earlier, their next game is against Liverpool, and the narrative gods have served us up a treat there. I mean, that's a game to look forward to.
Certainly is. Only 4 wins away from that lad getting a haircut now as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other game from this weekend, which I'm not sure how it's ended up last but by no means least, you would call it, Leeds 1, Spurs 2. Saturday lunchtime, which was kind of a pint of pure Premier League with pouring rain and lots of physicality and people getting stuck in. Daniel, did you enjoy?
Yeah, I really did. Yeah, I think I said at the top of the show that watching the game, if this had been last season, there was a 0% chance that Spurs would have won that game because they completely lost control in the second half. When Xavi Simons went off, I think pretty much, I don't know if coincidence or just the changes enabled Leeds to kind of feel that stronger. But yeah, they Spurs ground it out, and they just haven't done that recently. And they are near the top of the league because they have been doing that in the league more often than not. I went back and looked, and between the start of November 2023 and the end of last season, so that covers pretty much all of Ange Postecoglou's tenure, Spurs only won 1 away game in which they conceded. That was 4-1 at Ipswich. So basically, whenever they face any adversity on the road, either going behind or a team comes back at them, they just didn't win the matches. They either scored first, were pegged back and then just sort of wilted, or they conceded first and never got back into the match. And these are the things I think where Frank is making that tangible difference. There will obviously be little things he's doing. The new players help, but there just seems to be a different resolve amongst Spurs players that haven't been there before. I was really worried at the start of the game when I saw the front three. It looked too kind of weak to me. I was not sure if that they would be able to get back. Leeds are a really physical team in midfield and in defence, and I thought that Tottenham might just look a bit powder puff against them, but they got it done.
We saw that resolve of which you speak as well in the Champions League midweek when they came from 2 goals down to Bodo Glimt to earn a point. Lovely to see Matthias Tell getting a goal here as well. I imagine that'll mean the world to him. Yeah,
he was picked out as a really good story for the fact that he scored. I think by Thomas Frank saying he was so pleased for him. I think it was Mohamed Kudus's first goal for Spurs as well, I believe. As well, so really glad that both of them got off the mark, I suppose. I think Kudus has been the main creative threat almost too much, I'd say, in the early weeks of the season for Spurs. I think they kind of lacked the same balance on the other side. And it's kind of been up to Kudus to create something or cross the ball each time and hope that someone gets on the end of it. And again, looking in the numbers, he's had 60 take-ons already this season, which is comfortably higher than any other Spurs player, but comfortably higher than any other player in the league. So it very much has been get it to him and then hope that he kind of does something with it. But just speaking about that balance, I think since Destiny Udogie's come back into the side from left back, he can make those forward underlapping or overlapping runs again. And it does kind of get Spurs forward a little bit more on the left-hand side, because previously it had been Jed Spence playing on his weaker foot, essentially, and often coming inside or maybe playing it backwards. I think they've now got a bit kind of thrust going on either side. So I think that's been a key reason why they've, picked up. They've been about par, I'd say, in the opening part of the season, but they've looked a little bit more potent going forward, I think, in recent weeks.
All right, lying third. Just 2 points off the top of the table. Leeds losing a game at home in the league for the first time in over a year, 385 days.
We should mention the beach ball or inflatable ball.
Right.
Which almost got in the way when Okafor equalised. I mean, to the extent that it was in front of Vicario and he batted it away in anger, which is, how you should treat a beach ball.
Were you rooting for a Sunderland-style beach ball incident?
Probably not as much as Darren Bent's agent was, I suspect. but yeah, it was... and we know now that if it had gone the way, the goal wouldn't stand.
Wouldn't stand.
Yeah.
Maddest that goal stood.
Yeah.
Different times. Well, there you go. That was the Premier League on this match day 7. Anything else you want to add, Daniel, before we head off into the ether?
No, just
nothing
say
at all.
I'm going away on holiday this week to the Isles of Scilly, where I Yeah, I know. Well, we
tough.
not just reporting on the world's smallest football league, but actually playing in the game next Sunday. So
No
it's going to be
way.
fun.
What?
Yep.
Wow.
No deadline day, no transfer windows on the Isles of Scilly.
Amazing. Well, best of luck with that. May the best team win.
What position are you going to be playing? Has that been agreed?
I think substitute will be probably the natural position to start with, and then where I'm told. I mean, it all depends on
Finisher.
whether I can get a boat from St Agnes to St Mary's on the morning of the game. But I'm reliably informed that one will be running to take me over, so it is on.
Wow, that's extraordinary. Well, when you return, look forward to hearing all about that. Thank you for today, Daniel. Have a super time in the Scilly Isles. Mark, thank you for being with us this Sunday evening. Duncan, thank you for struggling through the vagaries of big city
London.
transport. Yeah. And listener stroke viewer, thank you for joining us and making us part of your Premier League experience. That's what I'd call it. We'll have another totally for you, the European one that'll be up Tuesday morning, and then Thursday we return with the regular show. So do look out for those. For now, from all of us here, it's goodbye.